On this episode of WTF, we are showing you how to make homemade dog treats that last longer. Hello and welcome to WTF, where we help you transform food in your kitchen. I'm Janie.
And I'm Ben.
And today we are talking all about how to make delicious homemade dog treats that you can preserve for longer. So remember, subscribe and get notified, leave your comments, and enter to win our giveaway. So last week we talked all about how do you use potassium sorbate safely to preserve food. So this week we want to do a follow-up and have a recipe to share. So we're talking about, bouncing ideas back and forth about what we can do. And one of the things that Ben and I really bonded on early on is that we have dogs. Cole behind the camera here also has a dog, and we love to make our dogs treats. So we're like, let's do one that's for the dogs this episode. And Ben, you are a super dog dad. You make all the food for your dogs every single day.
Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing the amount of time I put into my dogs and cooking. So.
But that means that you know a lot about what dogs like and also what's really good for them. Tell us a little bit about why do you make, homemade dog food for your dogs?
Okay, so there's a number of reasons we make homemade dog treats. First and foremost is the enrichment of our animal. So a bland diet day in and day out is boring, and it doesn't really provide much, enrichment and joie de vivre. Mm-hmm. So basically we want to give our dogs, basically the best and happiest life that they can have.
Yeah.
That's just number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is quality. That's the biggest push. So we want to focus on quality ingredients to give our animals quality treats.
Yeah, and I love the idea of enrichment, because you're right, they do get tired of eating kibble all day, so have some fun stuff for them. And of course we want to start, before we even dive into the recipe, for people who are already thinking of what they want to do for their own dogs, what ingredients do we absolutely want to avoid when we're making dog treats?
There are some big ones. The common sense ones are pretty straightforward. So chocolate is always the big one I grew up avoiding. Then there are little nuanced, landmines that you can step on. So things like raisins, macadamia nuts, artificial sweeteners. So things like xylitol is really pretty toxic to dogs.
Yeah, and I don't think we need to put any sweeteners in for dogs anyway. They don't need it sweet.
No, I mean, granted, like us, it's an indulgent. So just like us, they can suffer from all of the ailments related with sugar. So let's just cut that out altogether.
Yeah, and then there's little ones, right? I think avocado was one I didn't know, which I love avocado, and I'm glad I never gave it to my dog. What is it, onions and all kinds of...
Corn on the cob.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. So if you're not sure, Google the entire list. But those are some of the major ones to avoid.
Of course. And also consult your local vet if you have any other in-depth questions.
Good. I like that. I like that little CYA right there. Okay. Now, you've been making dog treats for a while, but when we were talking about it, and you kind of brought up, potassium sorbate would be an excellent addition to dog treats to make them last longer. Why is that?
It's been my experience, every time I make these dog treats, they mold within a week or two. And to me, that's a lot of effort going into something that doesn't quite last. And personally, I know how much my dog enjoys these, and I want to use them as often as I can. So we need to make them last longer.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's all about also efficiency of your time, saving the money. Anytime you got to throw food away, that's a huge waste. So, okay, let's go into your particular recipe. I do want to kind of talk about some of the ingredients and the process of how do you include the potassium sorbate as we go along.
Sure.
Here. So what do we have?
This is one of the easiest recipes to throw together. Essentially, we're just throwing all of our dry ingredients in and then adding our wet at the very end.
Okay.
Very straightforward. So the first ingredient is whole wheat flour, 300 grams. And our recipe should be in the link below.
And I know some people are like, dogs should go grain-free. If you feel like your dog should go grain-free, then swap out the grains for something else. This is just Ben's recipe. You could put whatever your dog likes in your recipe.
Brown rice flour works as an equivalent, absolutely. So to this whole wheat flour, I'm going to add cinnamon, 1 gram. Salt, 3.5 grams. Just like us, they need that sweet and savory, I guess, going on.
Yeah. And one of the things I'm noticing and I want to point out is that, Ben, as you're talking about it, you're being very specific about measuring everything in grams and not just like half a teaspoon, a cup here, Why is it that you're doing everything by weight?
So the most important thing about weight is being able to use that information, use that weight to dose out a preservative. So I have here potassium sorbate weighed out in proportion to the weight of my dough. So this is weighed out at 0.1% of my overall batch, and I wouldn't know what 0.1% is of my batch if I didn't weigh anything.
Right.
That's really it.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the most important things when you're adding a preservative to foods is that you can't eyeball it or just be like the recipe. Oh, I mean, maybe if you've already done the recipe 20 times you could, but otherwise, starting the first time, you definitely cannot eyeball your preservative.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're going to add our dry whole egg powder, which has been pasteurized. I'm actually going to flip this up.
All right. And why whole egg powder instead of just a fresh egg beat into here?
So the whole egg powder is pasteurized, and it's shelf-stable ingredient. So we want to give our product a shelf-stable quality, so we're adding shelf-stable ingredients.
Yeah.
So eggs and most other recipes are one of the only sources of contamination for, salmonella and E. coli, and eggshells just in general isn't good to bite into something. And granted, these are for our dog, but overall, we could use our whole egg powder to replace eggs in general.
Yeah, it's true, and we use it in lots of our recipes for like adding protein to things without, adding moisture, adding potential for salmonella. So it's a great all around ingredient. I mean, if you want to toss in an egg instead, go ahead. It's all okay. It also depends on what temperature are you cooking your treats to.
Right, yeah. So we're about to add our semi-liquid ingredients. So we have our oil-based peanut butter, which isn't going to really add any moisture per se. Choose a safe peanut butter. So these artificial sweeteners that we just brought up earlier tend to show up in peanut butters.
Okay.
So this is
label.
Check your label. This is an organic, sugar-free, totally sugar-free. So it's basically just peanuts and hydrogenated oil. The only bad thing in this is the hydrogenated oil. So this is funny. I just noticed this.
Yeah.
I don't have a spatula.
Okay.
So I have to grab one.
Okay.
Sorry. I'll be right back. So we are going to add our peanut butter to our mixing bowl. Oh my God, I locked it. This is a clown show. Sorry about that. All right, I'm going to add my peanut butter just like that.
That cracked me up.
We have to be able to laugh at ourselves a little bit.
No, more than a little bit.
Just a little bit.
That's life. If you can't laugh at yourself, I don't know. How do you get through your day? Anyway, go ahead.
You can add it all together and mix it. You can mix the flour as you go. A lot of people like to sift their recipes. Personally, I'm just throwing it all in and hitting go.
Yeah.
Easy.
One thing about the dogs is that they do not give you critical feedback.
Right. This is that one thing I'm not worried about, the fluff factor.
Yeah, and kind of while Ben's doing that, I just kind of want to make a note about the salmonella in dogs, because dogs typically, they got the Teflon stomach and they don't typically get sick, but they can, if they eat something with salmonella in it, then pass it through, drag it around your house, and then you could potentially get it. So that's, and there is a slight chance they could get salmonella.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
it
it
FYI.
results in I know this is food topic we're talking about, but usually comes out the other end. So usually ends up being bloody stool or something like that, which is not pleasant for anybody.
Yeah.
All right, so I am going to lock. Start slow. And it comes together pretty quickly. This will start to look like wet sand. And that's basically when I know to start adding my water.
Okay, and so while that's mixing, we kind of talked last week about potassium sorbate, and you can add it either dry or you can add it wet. And in this case, I noticed that you are preparing to add it wet.
Yeah.
Why are we doing a wet application in this recipe instead of just dumping it in with the flour?
Yeah, so potassium sorbate relies on hydration to be effective in its preservation. So instead of just adding it to our dry ingredients, like for some recipes like cookies, there's a big portion of oil.
Okay.
And a small portion of water, and we're working with regular eggs. So in this case, we have virtually no oil, and we have a portion of water.
Okay.
Okay, so the fact that I have a portion of water I can exploit and dissolve my potassium sorbate into, it's my preference.
Yeah. And I think when you're thinking about using potassium sorbate in different recipes, I guess the question is how do you make sure that it gets evenly dispersed, because that's really what you're looking for. You don't want one chunk with a clump of potassium sorbate and then one chunk with none at all. Because obviously we want to be able to keep these treats for longer and just kind of leave them without having to worry about them.
Yeah, so that's really it, is the full distribution of potassium sorbate in the water will get it fully distributed into our dough.
Okay.
And I just want to point out, I added my potassium sorbate directly to my water without stirring, and it's totally dissolved.
Okay, and we had said potassium sorbate. Oh, you already did it?
I did it.
I missed it, but
Sorry.
yes, it's totally done. So the general recommended range we have is 0.1 to 0.3%.
Correct.
How much are we using for this recipe?
We are using 0.1.
Okay.
I find personally that 0.1 is a good range to start with when you're trying to narrow down shelf stability. We bake these pretty dry. So at the end of the day, we're really giving it a dry, acidic environment. So there's really not going to be much bacterial growth.
Yeah. If you are making your own recipes and you're like, you know what, maybe my dog is older, they need a softer chew, or I just want to give them a softer chew, you can kind of start playing around with increasing that amount, maybe 0.2 or 0.3, depending on how long, and how long it lasts, right? So you can do all that. It's up for, experimentation. That's the fun part.
So here we are. Kind of came
smells like peanut butter in here.
It does. And you know what the funny thing is if it smells good to you, it's going to smell good to your dog. You know that.
There are all kinds of things that smells good to my dog that do not smell good.
Well, that's a very good point.
Cool. So that does look pretty sandy.
Yeah. And to this, I'm just going to start it up again and add my water. Easy peasy. I'm just going to let this go for a minute. I'll keep it.
All right, so while the mixer is going, I want to talk about this week's giveaway, which will be a bag of the whole egg powder and a bag of the potassium sorbate. So you can start experimenting in your kitchen or use our recipe, link in the description below. To enter to win, just leave in the comments below your dog's favorite treats, because we want to know what your dogs like. Our dogs like all kinds of things. I think one of the things, my favorite things that my dog likes that surprised me is mango. She loves mangoes.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and she loves like a lot of fruits, but she'll go crazy for mangoes.
Yeah, I think the funniest things are reaction videos to dogs having like highly acidic or like citrus fruits, because they smell them and then they just don't know how to react because they're so potent.
Ooh.
So tell us what your dogs like and what they don't like even. And we're done. That was easy. Okay, so normally, just want to point out this is a really dry, handleable, it's workable dough. You can pick it up, it's not going to stick to you. Okay, so the trouble is basically rolling it to its desired thickness in a relatively quick amount of time. It's going to start to dry out now that it's formed.
All right.
So luckily for us, we already have a dough prepared and rolled.
Cool.
So the magic of filmography here, voila.
Nice.
Ready to go.
Okay. And we got these like super fun shapes, but you could do whatever shape or just cut them into chunks. It don't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't. So I mean, the smaller your dog, the smaller you can, or the thinner you can roll this, and the smaller the form factor. Our dogs are kind of big, and they like big pieces, so we're going to do it as is. We have these fun little animal-shaped cookie cutters. Pretty easy to use.
All right. And as you're cutting, so let's jump ahead to you're done cutting. We got the dough, and we're ready to put them in the oven. What's the temperature? How long do you bake it for?
350 for about an hour.
Okay.
So the thing you want to focus on is the dryness of the dough. So they will start to look pretty. Would you do this for me, Janie? I'm sorry,
Sure.
It's just a little too far away.
Here we go.
Hey, so basically 350 for an hour. It should come out really dark amber and ultimately dry. There we go.
All right. Oh, I'm destroying this dough. I think this dough's a little squishy. Oh no, my zebra is sad. I missed it.
Let's try this one more time. Let's take two. I'm doing an elephant.
Okay, I'm gonna do one too. I'm gonna do a lion because it's bigger and it doesn't have the tiny zebra legs. Okay, there we go.
And this is also a fun.
Yeah, this would be so fun with my daughter. She would love this.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
This hasn't done it at all before.
It's because you're on camera now.
It's because we are on camera.
See, look,
and
these are great.
They're great. Trust us. We have magic. I'm going to do magic, okay?
All right.
Walla walla. Boom. It turned into our actual treats. So, going through the motions, cutting out all these pieces and baking in the oven at 350 for an hour will give you a nice dry cookie for your dog.
Yeah, but again, you can bake it to less time if you want the treats to be less dry. It really is up to you as long as everything in there is cooking. Most importantly, the egg in this. Actually, no, not even the egg because we're not using fresh egg.
Pasteurized, yeah.
Never mind. So normally this is the point of the show where we do our taste test, but obviously I'm not going to eat the dog treat. Maybe I'll try one later, but
You can.
I can, but I'm not going to. So we are going to cut to a few clips of our dogs trying out the treats for us. Take it away, Cole.
All right, puppies, you want treats? Oh, yeah, we want treats. We got one for Zoo. Oh, which one? Diesel. Zora. Oh.
More?
And more.
Leave it. Leave it. Okay, take it. Good boy. Do you like it?
Sammy, twirl. Woo, good girl. Okay, that was totally adorable. At least we think it was totally adorable. And you can get this recipe in the links in the description below. I want to quickly point out that these treats we actually made about 2-3 weeks ago. And they've been sitting here this whole time and they look as good as new. So hopefully you enjoy our recipe or you're excited to go and make some of your own treats for your dogs and now make them last longer. Until next week, from here in the Modernist Pantry Test Kitchen, I'm Janie.
And I'm Ben.